Hi, and welcome to Minnetonka Community Ed Winter Centerpiece Arrangement Workshop. My name is Marie Rayleigh. I'm the owner of Linmore Floral Design, and we're going to be working together tonight virtually, unfortunately, because we can't do anything in person right now with COVID, to make ourselves a winter centerpiece that hopefully, if you keep it watered and pull any dead product out, you'll be able to keep it lasting through the new year. You may need to replace some of the flowers because they, of course, may not last more than 10 days, but the rest of it should hopefully last. It may dry a little bit, but for the most part, it'll remain the shape and the textures, and it'll still look pretty. You may just need to sub out some other flowers as the other things dry up and die. The one thing that I'm going to say right off the bat is when you get home with your kit, if you have not opened your kit yet, please do so and get all your flowers in some water. You will have in your kit, you will have either a little packet of flower food like this or a packet of flower food like this. They're the same thing, just different brands. So these two flower foods, I mixed some in a little pitcher of water. So I'm going to use some of the water now, and then the rest of the water I'm going to put the flowers in right now just so they can start drinking. So I'm going to actually just pour some of this water in here right now in my two vases just to get started. So you'll see I have my flowers in water right now, and I can set that aside. All right, so in your kit you will find 3 succulents. There'll be a bigger one, this velvet succulent, and then 2 smaller succulents. They do not have stems. I'll show you how to wire them. You'll have 3 pine cones, 3 cinnamon sticks, 3 dried orange slices, 3 pieces of wire, and then we'll get into, your chicken wire. You will not have candles, but I will be showing you at the end of the class what you could potentially do with some taper candles or a pillar candle if you'd rather. So I'm going to set those off to the side for now. And you'll have in your fresh bouquet, you will have some bleached amaranthus. I cut the stems off of mine. Bleached amaranthus, some dried bleached bunny tails. You'll have Dusty Miller, baby eucalyptus, Ranunculus, silver brunnea, some Kahala roses, and then you'll also have a bouquet of winter greens. Within your winter greens, you're going to have some boxwood. You'll have, take all this out, but you'll have cedar, pine, and some varying spruce and firs. So you'll have the 2 bouquets, and now we're going to use everything together today. So first I want you to do is and your box and your 2 vases. So you'll start with your box and your 2 vases. And something just to grab, a wire cutter and a needle with a needle nose if you have it. If not, a scissors or just a plain wire cutter will do. And then one of the most important parts of floral design is having the proper tools for floral shears. So I have these 2 types of floral shears with me. I have this one, it's a type of bonsai floral shears actually, but they're fantastic floral shears. And then I have this Corona floral snip with the spring loaded. So some people, if they have hand problems, like to use the one with the spring loaded. This is my preferred type of floral shears. The difference between a floral shears and a scissors, and I say this in every video because it's very important, floral shears are 2 knife edges as opposed to a scissors has 2 fairly blunt edges. We want 2 knife edges so we're not pinching a flower shut, we're slicing it. We're slicing through the stem, we're not pinching it. So both of these have 2 blade sides as opposed to 2 blunt sides. Now scissors is still sharp, but if I were to run my finger across this, I would cut my finger. I can't do that on a scissors. I could run my finger on a scissors and not cut myself. If you do not have floral shears, and you do have access to what's called a bypass pruner. This is a general garden pruner. You'll notice on a bypass pruner, you'll have one blade and then one blunt edge. Now the blunt edge, of course, is still sharp, but it's not as sharp as the blade edge. If you only have access to this, this is better than a scissors. Make sure they're clean so they don't have a bunch of bacteria that you're then introducing to your flower. But if you're going to be using a bypass pruner, I want you to remember that the blade needs to be the closest side to the bloom of your flower or of your foliage, the part that's pretty. So what I mean by that is, I have this rose in here that broke off. If I'm cutting this rose to put in my arrangement, the blade side is on this side and the blunt side is on this side. I want the blade to be closest to the bloom. If I were to turn this around, the blunt edge would be closest to my bloom. And what would happen is if I use this now to cut this flower, I'd be pinching it shut. If I flip this over so the blade side is closest to the bloom, and I were to cut this again, I'd be giving it a slice, not a pinch. So, on to the next thing. I have my vases, I have my box. I'm going to grab my chicken wire. So usually in a centerpiece arrangement, I put my chicken wire inside my vase. Today, because we have two separate vases, I'm actually going to put my chicken wire on the outside of my vase, and this chicken wire is going to be acting more as a grid than it is going to be acting as like a mesh that I'll be weaving into. Oftentimes when we do arrangements with chicken wire, we use that chicken wire so we can create kind of like a tangle. In this case, I don't have the space for that because I don't want to have two blobs of chicken wire. I'd rather be able to just wrap this right over the top. So I'm going to bend my chicken wire. You may need to do a fair amount of bending to get it to be the right size. So it's kind of just a little arc there. I'm going to put that in my box on the outside of my vases. I'm going to shove that down in there, not in my vase again, on the outside. It's a tight fit. I have these boxes made custom for this class from a gentleman who owns this little store called Teak Revival, which will be in the information on this video on YouTube. So if you have any interest in looking into some of the products that he makes, he's up in Brooklyn Park. So he made these boxes for me to fit these two 4-inch vases. So anyway, there, I've got my chicken wire in there. It's not gonna move. I don't want it shifting at all. It's in there tight. I've really worked it down into that wood around my vases, so it's not gonna move at all. I could probably pick this up. Let's see. Yes, I can. All right, that's in there. It's not gonna shift. I'm gonna move all this other stuff. This is kind of the accent. I'm gonna set this all off to the side because I'm not gonna be using that for a while. And these succulents. Be very careful with those. They are delicate. All right. So now we're gonna get to the fun stuff. All right, I have my box. I have my vases. We're gonna start with our greens. I always start with greens when I'm doing a heavy green arrangement. And the reason is I like my greens to give me my shape. If I were to start with my flowers, I'd have a really hard time getting the greens in after the fact, and I might risk damaging the flowers, especially in the case of using evergreens, spruce and fir and cedar and pine. They're very sharp and they're very thick stems. So we're actually gonna get to a point where we're gonna have a very hard time getting everything in the water. You may not use everything you have, so just keep that in mind. But the greens are gonna give us the shape of our arrangement. So I'm going to start with some of my spruce. So you may have a piece like this in your bouquet. You can choose to use it like this, or we can cut it down. It all depends on the size of the arrangement you want to do. So if you're going to want to have it a circle, you're going to want to have most of your pieces the exact same length, so you can make them even all the way around. Or if you want to make it oblong, you may want to have a couple long pieces. So this arrangement, we could have in like kind of divided into thirds. So here's a third, and then you can have a third hanging out here and a third hanging out there. Or if you think of dividing it in half, where here's the line here, and we'll have half of the arrangement on this side and half of the arrangement on that side. It all depends on where you plan on putting this and the amount of space you have for your arrangement when you're done. So I have a very long table. It seats 10. Unfortunately, there's only going to be 4 sitting at it this Christmas, but I'm going to make it as if there's 10. So I want to make it a little bit of a longer centerpiece. So I'm going to be cutting off that tip. And you can do that with yours if you'd like. And now I have all these little things below here. I have this. So these 2 pieces are very different, but I'm going to look through the other spruce and fir that I have from my bouquet. And yours may look different than mine. It's just simply the nature of branches. We're all going to have something a little bit different, but we'll each have the same amount. So I'm just going to look through to see. I pre-cut some of my stuff to save some time while I teach you. So I'm going to start with that. So I have these 2 pieces that are kind of similar. So if I put this one in here, can't really see from there, but if I put this one in here, it's fairly wide. I'd be having a very wide end to my arrangement. You can see if I were to go like this, looking down from the top, this is what it would look like, and I'm not sure I like that. So rather than just sticking it in like that, I'm going to cut all these little pieces off. And usually I would say I'm going to save those and stick them in later, but they're going to be too short, so I'm actually just going to throw them in my garbage. So I have this piece, and I could put it in this direction, or I could put it in this direction, or this direction, and I think what I may end up doing actually is this alone. They're all pretty long, and this piece is pretty long. I'm actually going to cut that off. And now I'm left with this. So I think I might just stick with that piece. I'm going to feed it in through my chicken wire. Oops, I need to give it a fresh cut. Just like if you ever get a fresh Christmas tree, it's important to give things fresh cuts. So if I just stick it in right straight down into my chicken wire, this is what happens. It's going to go vertical. I don't want it to do that. I want it to go in at an angle. So I may not put it in right at that first loop of my chicken wire. I might need to put it in at the next loop. And I didn't put enough water in my vases. You want your water to go all the way up to the top. Just, there we go. Now I'm good. If it overflows a little bit, that's fine. Just be aware that it might overflow and come out the bottom of your box there. So here we go. There. I'm a little happier with it like this. So I put it in at a little bit of an angle, not straight up and down. And I'm going to come in with this one. Again, I don't need all those little pieces at the bottom. So I'm cutting those off. So it's very important to try to strip the greens, anything that's going to go into your water, which is very difficult with evergreens, especially with spruce and fir. If you have garden gloves, maybe try to get this off. This is just going to pollute your water really fast, make your water turn brown really fast. You don't have to pull them all off if you don't want to. It will just prolong the life of your arrangement if you can get all the needles off. Anything below the water pollutes the water, introduces bacteria. So I got as much of it as I can. I'm going to try cutting some of them off. You know, I might even grab my bypass pruner and just try to get some of those off. They're so sharp and I don't have my gloves. So that should do it. There we go. All right, so I'm going to take this one, and now I have this one kind of facing this way. So this branch that I have here, give it another, I think I cut it fresh, but I'll do it again. I'm going to have this one turning and facing this way. There we go. So I have one going one way, one going the other. Okay. Oh, it smells so good. Oh, just wonderful smell. Okay, then I have this. I'm going to save this one for later. I might end up having a good place for this. This got a little high. I think I might actually cut that piece off. I can save that piece later because it's long enough. I can save that one for later. All right, so I have this going that way. I'm going to save that piece for later. Now I'm going to come in with some of my fir. So this was spruce. This is fir. You can tell the difference between the needles. The spruce needles you can almost roll between your fingers, whereas the fir are flat. You can't roll them. They're more feather-like. So now I'm going to kind of go around. Let's see, some of these are a little... I'm going to cut this shorter. This one's too long for where I want to put it. I'm going to pull off these short ones. This I can strip with my hand. It's not so sharp. That spruce is pretty sharp. All right, so there's my little piece. No needles below. I'm going to start putting some on the sides here. And I can use that chicken wire and those little needles to try to get it to catch so it doesn't lift up out of my vase. I have this little piece, fresh cut. I'm going to go around my entire vase now with some short pieces, whether it's short pieces of fir, short pieces of spruce. This is going to give me my base. And so now if I was doing a round centerpiece, I would try to keep every piece the same distance from the outside, and you can look from the top and see what shape you're making. And it's okay if you want to have one side longer than the other. It's totally up to you. It's preference. Everybody has a different idea of what looks nice, and I am not going to tell you what looks nice. So I think I'll use this little piece. I don't want to neglect the center, so I've gone around. Now I'm going to take this one. It's kind of short and cute. Fresh cut. Strip off anything that's going to be below the water, if I can. Oh, it smells so good. And I'm going to put this one straight down the center. Now the center is going to be between my two vases, so I'm going to go a little off, but that's okay. Right in the middle there. See if I have any other ones I can put down in the middle like that. I think I do. Again, like I said, you may not use all of your greens. You don't have to. So I'm going to come from the top. Got some. Trying to get every stem way down at the bottom if I can. I'm starting to get sticky from the sap. All right. A couple more pieces I think I'll add. So I have this one piece of fir that's a little bit longer, and it actually has a really nice curve to it. So I'm actually going to use that one on this side. And try to get it so it gives me a little more coming out the end there. Same with this. I use this one on this side. So all your evergreens are going to have two sides. They're going to have kind of like the side that was facing up in the tree and the side that was on the underside. And you'll notice when you're looking at them, I wouldn't say necessarily one side is prettier than the other, but one side is definitely shinier than the other. So if that makes a difference to you, it'll be a little harder to stick this in and have it drape down if I want to see the top. Now I could have it facing sideways like this or this way, and then you'd see that shiny side. But I'm okay if I'm only seeing the more matte side, the less glossy side. I like having that variation in the depth, so it kind of gives you some different depth. So I'm seeing the top of the spruce here and the bottom of the fir here, and it helps create more texture and, like I said, depth. So it's not all the same texture looking up from the top and all the same texture looking down at the bottom, because if you're getting down on the side, which is important at this stage, when you start really filling it in, you can kind of get down like this. And if you have a Lazy Susan, put your centerpiece on a Lazy Susan so you can turn it. So you can get down on your knees and turn it so you can see all the different things that you might see when you're sitting at a table. And you'll understand why it's important not to have all of your branches going in with the same side of them facing in one direction. So I have some looking that way, some looking this way, some looking up, some looking down. So I'm going to use maybe one more piece of this fir. I took this one piece here. I'm actually going to cut it into two pieces like that. Strip off the stuff that will go below the water. I'll have one more right here. I have to keep shoving things in. They're starting to catch on themselves, so I can get them to make sure they're way down in the water. All right, then I have one more. Cut it fresh. And I'm going to put that one right here. Oops. I'll turn it so you can kind of see what I've been working on that side too. So there we go. And I'm going to take a break from the spruce and the fir for now. And I'm going to move on to my pine. Now everybody's pine is going to look different as well. So for example, this is my piece. I don't need all this. I could just pull it right off. So lovely. Pull all that off. You might have a piece that looks more like this. Or I tried to grab a couple different so you would all see. There might be some shorter ones. You may have a very long one that you need to cut into smaller pieces like this. You want them roughly this long. If you do have some really long ones, some that are maybe even this long, you can leave them that long if you want to have them spreading out really wide. Otherwise, you can, for example, if this was longer, let's say it was this long, right? I can find a spot halfway down the pine, like right here, let's say, and I could cut right there. So if I had maybe like a foot this way and a foot this way, I could cut that in half, but just make sure you pull those needles back so you're not cutting your needles. You just want to cut the branch, and then you can cut that into two pieces. So for argument's sake, I will show you on this one because this one's fairly long. It's still a little short for this, but if I pull these, let's see, right through here, I'm going to cut. I'm not cutting the needles, I'm just cutting the branch. I ended up with two pieces. Then all I need to do is strip some of these needles. And there we go. So if you want to do that, you can do that. These little pieces, I'm just going to find the water. I'm going to stick these in, create some more texture just throughout. I'm going to put these kind of sporadically throughout my centerpiece. If you have some longer ones, you can have them hanging way out the side if you'd like. I'm going to keep mine short. And I'm actually going to keep mine kind of heavier on one side than the other. So I have this one that's a little different. And so this piece I'm going to have coming, it's too long. So what I'm doing is, I can guess, but if you need to have an idea of how short should I cut this, you can always cut more off, but you can't put it back on. If you hold it down to your table, that'll give you an idea of roughly how much you need to cut. So like right now, I don't want it sticking up this high out of my centerpiece. I can put it down. If I push my centerpiece off the edge of the table, I can put it down below the table like this and go, that's how high I want it sticking out of my centerpiece. So I'm going to cut just a little bit above where that table mark was. And I need to pull off some stems or those needles because they're going to go into the water. And then I can stick this in there where I wanted it. There we go. So I have a little more pine on this side than I do on the other sides. Just kind of adds a little interest to that side. That piece of spruce keeps popping up, so I think I need to push it down underneath. There we go. There's a little branch that I was able to catch on the underside of the chicken wire. This is why it's very important that your chicken wire doesn't move at all, because if your chicken wire was going to shift, it would be doing that right now, and it'd be lifting all your beautiful branches out with it. So that chicken wire needs to be in there really good. If you need to, you can even staple it onto your wood. Just know that you'll have a hard time getting it off and taking your centerpiece apart when you're all done without kind of ruining the box. So got my pine in there. Now I'm going to move on to some of the cedar. And you have two different kinds of cedar. You'll have like one branch of Port Orford cedar, which is fairly green. And then you'll have another gold tip cedar that has a little bit of a gold edge. So you know your cedar dries out really fast, just because it's, you know, it's a rainforest plant. It doesn't like drying. It will dry in the exact shape that it's hanging in your centerpiece. These will dry. They will dry exactly as they are. Mine are already starting to dry. That's just kind of what happens with cedar. So it has dried in this shape. It's still staying green. As long as I don't move it a lot, it's not going to fall all over the place. But I'm going to put all my cedar kind of on this side. So I put all my pine on this side with a little on this side. I'm going to put all my cedar on this side with a little bit on this side. So I'm kind of evening my arrangement out a little bit. So your cedar may look like this. Your cedar may look a little different than mine. I am cutting off some of the stuff that I don't think is very pretty. So I'm left with this. Cutting off the branches and anything that's going to go below the water. So I have this little piece. And I'm going to put it again right in here with my other one. And so now starting to get my shape. This may happen to you. I don't like how this piece is sticking up like this. I think over time as I've stuck things in, it's shifted. This used to be through the center and now it's off to the side. But the nice thing is I can come in here and I can cut off the part I don't like. I'm probably not going to use this, so I'm just going to throw it in the garbage. There. I didn't like how that was sticking up like that. There we go. Now I'm going to come in with my one piece of Port Orford, pulling off the stuff that'll go below the water. I'll put that one on this side. You may have two pieces of Port Orford. It all kind of depends on how big your one piece was. One more little chunk of the cedar that I'm going to use. I'm going to set this aside. And I think I'm going to use it on this side here. Okay. So again, I'm going to turn it, make sure I'm looking at every side, giving every side some attention. Remember, I haven't used every piece of my green. I'm setting some aside for later in case I find I have a hole that I need to go back and fill. I won't be able to do that if I use everything right away. All right, so now I'm moving on to my boxwood. And again, everybody's boxwood is going to look a little bit different. You may have just a bunch of short pieces like this. You may have a long piece like this. We're going to break them down into pieces that are manageable and easier to use in your centerpiece. So you can break them with your hand like I'm doing, or you can use a Floral Shears. So I'm going to cut this into a couple pieces, making sure that every piece I save will have enough stem to reach down into the water. So I can have pieces that are this size. I can have pieces that are like this. And what I might do with this one is I find these 4 pieces that are all joining this main stem there. And then I have this piece coming out from the center. I'm going to cut that piece out and divide this into 2, just like that. And I'm strip the leaves. And I'll strip all the leaves on this piece, and on this one, and on this, and I think I'll be good. And I can set extras aside. All right, so now at this point, I can kind of see on my arrangement if I have any spaces that I need to fill in with some greens. So I'm going to put some over here. And I've just cut all of these fresh, so I don't need to do it again. I'm just kind of filling any space where I can see the chicken wire, I can see the vases underneath. Don't forget, again, to get down low and put your boxwood in places where you might be able to still see the chicken wire down here. So So now I have, this piece is kind of big. I'm actually going to cut this little one off. If it's long enough, it'll still reach the water. So I can come in from over here. Make sure I get it in the water, that I'm not just sticking it into the box. And we'll put this one on this side. There we go. So I have most of my box over here, and I put a couple tiny sprigs on this side. You can do it evenly throughout if you'd like. Oh, I had one more piece of pine. I think I'm actually going to put this one in. Just right under here. There we go. Okay, so now that is our greens portion. We're going to move on to that fresh bouquet that you have as well. So in your fresh bouquet, you still have another type of foliage, a new type of green called Dusty Miller. You'll have, I think you'll have 4 stems of Dusty Miller. Dusty Miller can also be cut into smaller pieces. So you have these huge pieces, and sometimes you have a leaf that breaks off like this one just did. We can still use this, so don't throw those away. So I have another one here that when I pulled it out, I ripped off a bunch of leaves because I was a little aggressive pulling it out of my vase. So be very careful. But we can still use these. Dusty Miller does tend to weep a little bit, so just be very mindful that if you start running out of water, it's going to get really sad, just like everything else. So check your water frequently, especially the first day. If you've ever had a fresh Christmas tree, those first couple days, that the greenery will just go and suck up a whole bunch of water. So I'm going to look at my piece now. And I have this really awesome top here. And knowing that my vase isn't very tall, I can actually cut that tip off like this. Again, we're going to end up having like multiple pieces of this stuff again. And I hate wasting some of these beautiful little things, but I'm going to have to. I can't use these. But I'm going to take this, and now we get to kind of fill in. This is going to give us a nice icy, frosty, wintry green, wintry color and texture that's so lovely. I gotta find a hole in here. Now I'm gonna start filling in again, filling in more of my holes that I've created. And I can cut this again. I have all these really big, beautiful pieces. I'm gonna save these for later in case I need them. I'm not gonna throw them away. This lovely one here. Again, you don't have to use everything. At this point, I'm just trying to find a good place to fill these holes. And I might move on to another pretty one before I use up those. Get this pretty tip in there. So I'm going to look and look and look and maybe turn my arrangement, look from different angles, find that space that I can put this in. I think I'm going to use all the tips before I move on to use the ends. That one broke. Let's see. Get down low again. Make sure I don't miss anything. I'm actually going to turn it while I'm down low, while I'm down here, so I can see what I'm working with. I have another pretty tip of the 4 stems that I had, and I have a perfect place for it right there. Now that I've done that, I can come back in with all these kind of second tiers. Oops, lost a piece. So I have these. Now they're already getting sad just simply because of the nature of them being pulled and pulled, but I can still use them. I'm going to go like this. Find a good spot in that chicken wire. That one was sitting out long enough. I probably should give it another cut. So make sure you're not putting everything from the top. Make sure you're coming in from underneath as well. We're not trying to create layers like the 7-layer salad if you grew up eating that. We don't want layers where it's like everything's here, the next thing's here, the next thing's here. You want it all intermixed. So make sure you go up and down and underneath things. So this one's kind of goofy. I might end up having to cut that leaf off, save it for later. And then I can, like I said, I'm lifting some cedar right here to try to find a hole that I can put it in so it's underneath the cedar when that cedar lays flat again. And I'm saving all these Dusty Miller pieces for later. I have quite a bit of stuff that I still need to get in here, so okay, I'm gonna wait on that piece. I think I might be able to get this one in there. I'll cut that for later. And I'll put this piece over here in the water. Make sure it's in the water. All right, so now you can't see the angle I'm seeing, but right now I have this one piece of Dusty Miller. Everything is pretty much roughly the same distance outside of my vase with the exception of this one, which is kind of like hanging out here in the middle of nowhere. All I'm going to do is just turn it a little. And you might need to do that with your centerpiece. Look at it, might need to shift a couple things around. Okay. So now I'm moving on to my baby eucalyptus. So now your baby eucalyptus, you can do some fun things. You can have to pull the opposite direction. It's kind of confusing to get those leaves off. Rather than running your hand down, you're going to run your hand up. So be careful you stop at the right time. I can tuck it down low with everything else, or I can kind of have it sticking up in fun angles like this. So I'm going to put this one here. And then maybe I want these coming out this way. And your pieces will be different than mine. And I'm going to try to have this one come this direction a little bit. So I'm going to come in at a really strong angle. There we go. That might be sticking out too far. So the glory of not having to use flower foam is that I can put things in and pull them out. If we were using flower foam right now, I wouldn't have been able to do that. I would have just created a hole in my foam that I would not be able to stick this back in that same area. And then what happens is you create a bunch of little pockets of air inside the floral foam that then lead to some problems with your flowers drying out. So I haven't used flower foam in an arrangement in almost 2 years now. I stick with chicken wire, floral frogs, Kensen frogs, glass frogs. In my Thanksgiving class, we used a plastic floral pillow, which acts like chicken wire. It sits either inside your vase or on top of your vase. But there are a lot of alternatives to floral foam, and floral foam is really bad for the environment, so I choose not to use it in any of my classes. So I'm going to just keep moving on. I have a couple pieces like this. I cut my main bunch of baby eucalyptus before starting this class. So this was just like kind of the end, and I thought, well, maybe I'll use it. I'll save it just in case. I think the stem might be a little thick for me at this point. I don't know if I'll be able to get it in there without damaging all the other stems that are already in the chicken wire. So I think what I may end up doing is just cutting this little piece off and using this one. And then unfortunately these two pieces I won't be able to use. If I wanted to, I could cut those. And I could fish around on the ground for some of that spruce or that fir and create a little bundle to set somewhere just because it smells really nice. I could set this just in my arrangement knowing that it's going to dry out. It might dry really nice, it might not. I guess I could find out. Sometimes baby eucalyptus dries really pretty, sometimes it doesn't. But I have this lovely place for this one right here. And I think I have one more little sprig. Oh, it broke. Here we go. I have one more sprig that I'm going to put right here. All right. There we go. So I've got my shape. And now I can go back and I can look again, get down low and see if I have any weird spots I need to cover. These make a great option for if you need to hide the base of your arrangement. I can take these and I can go around and look for any spaces that I'm still really seeing that chicken wire and I can tuck those in on the underside. So I can come from underneath and put them right at the base of my arrangement in that, still inside the vase. Make sure it's in the water, but it'll help me hide that chicken wire. Okay, and I'll save these again for later, and I still have one piece left. If I find any weird holes, I can fill in. So, still not liking that, and I think what might happen is I might just cut that piece off rather than trying to dig it out. I'll cut that one off. I'll try again. There we go. I like that more. I have kind of something that's a little high and a little low. Everybody has a different idea of what they might like. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our silver brunnea. Just little silver balls. Again, your piece is going to look different than mine. You may even have two to make up a similar volume. Yours might even be bigger. You may have some of this way down here. You can try again to cut your silver brunnea into two pieces if you have a lot of this greenery way down your stem. I just have this one piece and I'm going to use it in one place. So I'm going to look through my arrangement and see if I have a nice place that this can fill in and become a focal point. I wouldn't want to put it way down here. Nobody would see it. I also don't want to put it smack dab in the center looking straight up and down, because not often people are going to be looking at it from above like this. They're going to be looking at it from over here. So I don't want to hide it way down inside. So I'm going to do that trick of holding it next to the table to have an idea of how short I want to cut it. And I cut it at the table. And I have this place right here where I can shimmy it in there, moving stuff around. You're going to have a really hard time getting into your chicken wire now. It's getting pretty tight. So there, I have mine right here. Now I'm going to move on to my roses. So these are collar roses. They still have the thorns on them, so be very careful. I'm going to break the thorns off with my fingers. I'm not going to strip it. It's not good for your roses to strip your hand down the side. I'll break all these off. Now doing that same thing, I'm going to look to see. Now you can put, you have 3 roses, you can put them all together, you could put 2, you could put 1, you could put them individually throughout. At this point, I want you to kind of look through your arrangement and see if you have a place that will kind of like hug it and hold it in place. If you'd like, you can have roses sticking out. You could have them, this is all, and up to personal preference. If I wanted to, I could have roses sticking out above my arrangement like this, or have them tucked down, or have one just a little bit higher than the other. It's totally up to you. Play with it. You might end up really liking it a certain way, or you may say, you know, I like mine tucked in. I like everything kind of inside. It's totally up to you. I'm going to put one over here. I have this perfect little spot for it. These roses will open up a little bit more. You can also blow on them and turn them a little like this. Kind of encourage them to open up. You can also pull off those guard petals, or what's called reflex. You can bend those guard petals back on themselves to kind of give it that illusion of opening up. So I'm going to take the guard petals off these roses. I didn't take it off the first one because they weren't looking too bad, but that one, the guard petals looked kind of bad. Guard petals are the petals that are on the outside of the rose that protect it. They act as a guard. So I have this other spot right next to this one, and now it's going to get tricky. Make sure you're getting it in the water. I'm going to put this one right next to that other rose, just like that, and then I'm going to turn this and see how I look on the other side. And I have this place right over here for this one. That's a little high. Luckily, it's not foam, so I can kind of wiggle and twist. If you put it in and you don't like it, wiggle it and twist it in your fingers to pull it out. If you just pull, you might pull everything else with it. So kind of wiggle and twist your fingers like this to get it out. Cut it a little too long, so there, now I can shorten it up. And again, make sure I'm going into my vase. There we go. So I have them all kind of around where I haven't decided if I like where I've put them, but I can always move them. Now I'm moving on, moving on to my ranunculus. So now ranunculus, you can do the same kind of thing that we did with the eucalyptus. We can have them kind of hanging out above the top of the centerpiece, or we can have them tucked down inside. Again, they also will open up a little bit more. So for example, if I wanted to have mine kind of hanging out up here, again, make sure you're getting it in the water. I think I got it in there. Yep. So I don't want it to be an antenna. I don't want it to be sticking straight up and down like that. So I didn't go in at quite a strong enough angle. I think I might need to, there we go. Okay, I have one here, and I think I might do another one right next to it. Again, in the water. Double check that you're going in the water. This one together. And then I'm going to put this one alone over here. So what I'm doing is I'm pulling my greenery back a little bit so I can make sure I'm seeing the vase and I'm sticking my ranunculus in the water, that I'm not sticking it on the side of the vase. So now I've got my ranunculus, I've got my roses, still have some dusty miller left if I need to. Now I'm going to move on to my succulents. So we're using these as if they're a flower. You have two options now. These will root out if you put them in dirt. They've already dried, they have a little scab or kind of a canker on them. So if you were to put these just in some moist succulent soil, they will root out and become an actual plant. What you'll need to do is you'll need to pull off a couple of these petals to have a little bit more of a stem on it, and then just set it in some wet soil, and just make sure that that soil doesn't dry out, but that it also doesn't sit soggy. You can Google some like propagating succulents, but or you have the option of wiring this and sticking it in your arrangement. You can also just set it in your arrangement if you're nervous about wiring. If you're going to wire your succulent, what you'll do is you have 3 pieces of wire. We're going to cut those 3 pieces of wire into 6 pieces of wire. So you're just going to cut that in half. Cut it at an angle, because then what you've done by cutting it at an angle rather than cutting it completely flat is you've created kind of a needle that makes it easier for you to stab through things. So we're going to cut that at an angle. These are some of the dullest wire cutters I think I could possibly have grabbed from my kit. There we go. So I've cut all of these, and now I want my 3 pieces went to 6. So I can set 3 of those aside for my oranges and have these 3 for my succulents if I so wish. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this wire, and I'm going to stick it through the stem. Now if you do this, you'll still be able to plant it later if you want, but just know that you're going to have to pull more of the petals off in order to have that length of stem that hasn't been damaged so it can root out. It may start even rooting out while it's in your centerpiece. So I've stuck this through my stem, and I'm going to bend it back on itself like a hairpin. And now don't let go. If you're going to let go, hold it upside down. I have a couple little petals that are already breaking, so what I can do is I can take this and I can set this little petal of the succulent. I can actually set this on top of some soil, and this also will root out if I keep the soil moist but not soggy. So I have that. I'm going to twist that wire, and now I've created a kind of a flower. So it has a stem and the succulents at the top. Now you could wrap that in floral tape if you happen to have it, Scotch tape if you want to. It is fine just like this. This will help keep that succulent in place when you stick it in your centerpiece. Like I said, I'm going to show you how to, this is one that I'm going to wire. And then the next two, I think because they're so small, I might just set them in my arrangement rather than wire them in. So I can take this and I'm going to use it like a flower, like I said. So here, I'll turn this so you can see. I'm going to find a nice place. Be very gentle with these. They're very delicate. I'm going to find a nice little place right in here in this boxwood. So now I don't have to worry about this going to the water line. This is just going to set and rest right in there in my centerpiece, just like that. I'm going to move that ranunculus. I don't really like how I have that. I'm going to put it over here. I like that better. There we go. So I have 1, 2, 3. There we go. But anyway, I have my succulent just kind of resting in here. That wire is just going to keep it from falling out of the arrangement. Now, if I were to take these other 2 little succulents and not wire them, I could wire them if I'd like, but I'm not going to. This one I can just set in here. I can just sit it down. Just set it in my arrangement, just like that. Same with this one. I don't have to wire it if I don't want to. I'm just going to find a nice place where the greenery is going to kind of hold it in place. It's not going to fall out of my arrangement. And I can just sit it right in my arrangement, just like that. I don't have to wire it, but they're acting like flowers. So right now I have them all 3 on this side. I'm not sure I like that. I may end up moving it. I may end up moving one of my roses over to this side. I'm still just kind of looking at it and deciding what I want to do. Because right now all my succulents are on this side. So if somebody's sitting on this side of the table, they don't get to see a succulent. But I'm going to try to shimmy some things around. Make a nice little place for the succulent to sit on this side. And there we go. I think I've created a nice little place. So all 3 of my succulents are on this end, and that's okay. I don't really have a good place for it over here, but I do have my silver brunnea, and that's really pretty. We're going to use the pine cones the same way we use the succulents, where we're just going to set them in. So if you want to keep that in mind when you're trying to find a place for your succulent. Next, we're going to move on to this. It's called Bleached Hanging Amaranthus. So it doesn't smell very good. It smells like bleach. It smells like paint. But it is super pretty, and we can do a lot of fun things with it. So I've cut the stems off of one of mine broke in half. You can leave the stems on if you want. I cut mine off. If you had left some of it on, you can use that to stick in. I know I didn't need to do that. I just want to find a nice place where this is going to actually spill onto my table. So I'm just going to lay it down on the table like that, and then find a nice place, since this doesn't need to be in the water. I'm just kind of stick it into the arrangement, so it's just going to catch on other things. But this is allowing me to have it kind of spill down onto the table. So on this side, I'm going to come under here, and it'll catch there. I can have it spill. And I don't know if I want to put any on this side. I'm going to clean up my space a little so I can see what I'm doing. I might put all of it on this side. We'll see. So you have 3 pieces. Some of mine broke, so I think I'm going to put all of it. So this is kind of what the stem would look like, only it goes on. You'll see in your bunches. I think I'm going to keep all of mine on this side, and I'm going to actually kind of come underneath with this one, kind of hook it under here like this. So that will actually just spill onto the table. If you want to cut them shorter, you can. So if you end up having some shorter pieces like this that broke, you can use these on this side if you'd like, or you can put them all together. This one isn't going to spill onto the table, but it'll at least kind of bring some of that white. I could also decide to cut it in half again and use them short like this. So if I wanted to put this one in here, and say maybe over here. Again, they don't have to go into the water. They're preserved. They'll stay like this forever. If you don't want to use it in this arrangement, you could hang it from anything. You could, if you have a Christmas wreath already that you want to decorate, you could hang it from there. I can even have one piece coming up like this, kind of like that. And I think I might take one of those that I had hanging and falling onto the table, and I might put that one on this side, like that. Again, I don't need to put it in water. I just need to get it to catch on something. So I don't know if you can see. It's just kind of hanging here on the table. So next we're going to move on to all these little accents. So we have pine cones, we have cinnamon sticks, and we have the orange slices. The orange slices are just kind of that pretty orange that can blend in with that peach. Now, when your peach roses, when your Kahala roses die, you could add white roses, you could add red roses, you could add whatever color rose you want. Just wanted to give you a different color option this time of year. So now your oranges, you're going to take your orange, take one of your cut pieces of wire, you're going to stick it through that orange. Again, try to use that, that needle point edge that you used. And I'll stick it through, then I'm going to hairpin it, and then twist it. So these orange slices, if I look around my centerpiece and I go, I need some color somewhere, maybe I need some color under here, this is a good place for those orange slices to add some pops of color. And the tighter you twist that, this is where that needle nose comes in handy. The tighter you twist it, the more that wire will stay on there without the orange flopping. There we go. No, it's not gonna flop on me anymore. It was flopping over. So that doesn't need to be in the water. Again, it just needs to be in the arrangement. So if you don't want to wire them, you don't have to. You could just set them in there. So you can use that needle nose pliers to really twist that wire on there. I might need to turn this so I can see what I'm doing. I can come around this side. Put my little orange slice in here. Maybe I'll finish off with an orange slice right in the top there. It gets a little bit tricky sometimes with these orange slices. There we go. Okay, I'm going to put one right down here through the top to add some orange right here. Okay, now I have my cinnamon sticks. You can wire them together if you haven't used all your wire yet, like this, and put them in. You can have them vertically. This is kind of where you can have like a free choice. You can do whatever you'd like. I'm going to put mine in vertically like this. Again, they don't have to reach the water either. I'm just kind of finding a nice place to stick them in there. There we go. Just adds a nice fun texture. Pine cones, find a nice place to set them again. It's a lot of stuff, so if you choose not to use them, that's totally fine. You might have a nice, you might be running out of places to put them. Again, your greenery will kind of hold them in place, just like the succulents will kind of hold them in place. So I'm just looking for nice places to put them. Get down low, look around. Maybe you have a really big hole that you're like, oh, I need something right there. I have one of those right here underneath a rose. If you do want to wire them in, if you haven't used your wire for your succulents, or if you want to cut your wire even shorter, you can take your pine cone, take a piece of wire. If you wrap the wire around kind of the lowest you possibly can go on your pine cone without breaking off all the little seed heads. And you can use that needle nose pliers to really crank that wire down. Oops, fell right off. Trying to get all the way around there and crank it down. That little bit of wire will help it stay in there if you have it, if you're trying to put it in a place that it might fall out. That tiny bit of wire right here off the bottom of my pine cone, but I'll now be able to kind of get it into this tricky place on this side over here, and I'll turn this so you can see that I couldn't quite get it to stay, but now it's going to stay because I have that little bit of wire in it. So turn this so you can kind of see what I've been doing on the other side. So I have these hanging. If you don't like them hanging that long, you don't have to. Like I said, you could cut them. And the last thing I have here are my bunny tails. So I'm going to use those similar to my ranunculus. Kind of like those to float. Again, they don't have to be in the water. They can kind of, we have 4 of them, and kind of hang out. Again, you don't have to use them if you don't like them. But they can add some nice height, delicate height. They don't have to be in the water. So I'm having a hard time getting that one in there, so I'm just going to cut away some of that stem. It doesn't need to reach the water. It just needs to stay where I want it. And I think I might put my bunny tails a little shorter. There we go. You know, I think maybe I don't even like them today. I might not use them today. They weren't really adding anything. So, decided I will maybe put this at my table and then decide if I might want them later. Anyway, so there we have it. Like I said, if you're not a huge fan of peach, when these roses die, you can go back in and switch out for some white flowers if you'd like. You do have space that if you do buy a dozen roses or 6 roses, you will be able to get all of them in here, you know, a week from now. Otherwise, your arrangement should be fine without the roses, with just the succulents and the pine cones. If I were to take those roses out, it's still a very large centerpiece. I'm actually going to cut this rose. I don't like how tall that rose is. See, you can move them around as much as you'd like. I think I might put this rose over here. Didn't really like where I had it that first time. I think I'm going to like it over there. Yes, I do. There we go. So you can make changes as you see fit. So make sure you keep your centerpiece watered. When you're done making it, check it the next morning. You're probably going to need to top it off again, and then check it a couple hours later. It's going to need quite a bit of water in that first 24 hours. If you have any questions, you can put them in the comment section of the YouTube video, and I'll try to get back to you as soon as possible. Have a lot of fun with this, and very happy holidays.